If you have not gotten into the paid course, you're welcome to take a look at that at the website mindfreed.org. You can also get a session with myself or a therapist that's trained by me. My name is Roman Zanoni. I'm a trauma healing specialist. And today we're going to be talking about the levels of consciousness and how to transcend them. So again, as I mentioned, the theme for today is levels of consciousness. And yes, there are levels to this. So what are we talking about when we say consciousness? So for instance, if you go into the dictionary and you look up consciousness, you will come to a definition that says the state of being awake or aware of one's surroundings. The state of being awake or aware. That's how the dictionary defines consciousness. But really, when we look at things from a metaphysical standpoint, we have to go a bit further with this concept of consciousness, because we are, of course, talking about being awake. We are, of course, talking about being aware, but not just of the physical surroundings, because after all, it would be inadequate for us to think that we are only what we can see with the physical eye, and that the universe is only what can be held by the physical eye. So we must recognize that to be actualized, we need to be in touch with more than what we can see with our actual eyes. So what more really is there? If you think carefully about your existence, what makes you a conscious being is, yes, your awareness and your ability to observe. But for humans, it's very special, because for humans, our consciousness is our superpower. If you were to compare us to the animals or the plants, we're operating with a level of consciousness that's just a little bit beyond what the other creatures seem to have. So what's special about our consciousness? Well, our consciousness as humans is sophisticated. We have something called free will. This is the ability to make choices and decisions for ourselves, especially on a moral level. We have the ability of free will. This is closely tied in with human consciousness. This is what's special about being a human being, our free will. Our free will is our ability to choose. Unlike animals that run mostly on programs, we have the ability to transcend the basic programs of survival and to make choices as to what we prefer without it being necessarily more optimal for survival. We get into being able to create art and enjoy art, even though that's not necessary for survival. And under that umbrella, music and dance, the visual arts, we can create films that can captivate an audience, and we can sit in an audience and watch a fictional story and let our emotions get engaged in that physical story, even though we know that the story we're watching isn't real. We're able to get ourselves involved in it. We have a sophisticated level of consciousness that can contemplate who we are in this universe, where we come from, where things are going, to be able to develop theories about our present, about the future. So our thirst for exploration and knowledge is unmatched on this planet. We as humans are very special. And what makes us special is our sophisticated level of consciousness. So in order to be actualized as a human, you want to make sure you're transcending levels of consciousness, because you don't want to be operating, moving, vibrating in the lowest level of consciousness. So what are these levels of consciousness? What's the lowest level? And how do we get through them? How do we make sure we're transcendent and on the highest level of consciousness? How do we make sure we're operating in our life at optimal efficiency for a human being? Well, that's a good question, and that's exactly what we're going to cover right now. So let's take a look at the levels of consciousness, because yes, there are levels to this. For those who are on the Zoom call, I'm going to share a screen with you. So in this pyramid chart, what we have here is 4 levels of consciousness illustrated. And at the very bottom, we have victimhood. And then above victimhood, we have responsibility. Above responsibility, we have enlightenment. And above enlightenment, we have self-actualization. These represent the 4 levels of consciousness. So that first level, victimhood, is the level that we are all born into, because as babies, our consciousness is very limited if we are conscious really at all, right? So we understand at that age feelings and needs, right? If we feel hungry or if we feel upset or irritated, we can acknowledge the basic three emotional states, as we discussed on our I believe it was last Monday, talking about the emotional color wheel. And those 3 states are satiation, irritation, and trepidation. But beyond the basic emotional states, we're born into this world with a very limited level of consciousness and awareness. That starts to open up as we grow with age and with experience, right? So that first level, we call it victimhood, because you are in a state when you're in the lowest level of consciousness of I control nothing. I do whatever I must do to avoid the pain, the crack of the whip. I am just moving through life totally and completely helpless. Does that make sense? So that's the victimhood mentality. There are many people who, even though they're adults, they still operate and live in this state of victimhood, this feeling of being caught. For instance, if you look victimhood up in the dictionary, you'll find the definition that says the state of having no control or having a feeling powerless. So yes, the state of feeling powerless and having things just happen to you is the victimhood mindset. Maybe you can recognize this in yourself. If you've ever operated, kind of moved in this level of consciousness where you're in victimhood, then you're in this lower level of consciousness. We absolutely want to transcend out of this level of consciousness. So again, there are many people who are adults and still live in this victimhood mindset. Just whatever happens to me is what happens to me. I have no control. They have not gotten in touch with their personal power. The next level of consciousness then, above that, where you'll find the majority of people, is the state of responsibility. The state of responsibility. The state of responsibility is higher than the state of victimhood. A responsible person has recognized that life is not just only what happens to them, and they don't blame everything on everyone else. People who are in a state of responsibility recognize that they need to work hard to survive, to provide. And so people who are in a state of responsibility do their duty. They do what they must do. Typically, they do what they're told to do. People who are in a state of responsibility do what they are told to do. Why? Because they fear authority. People who are in a state of responsibility live also in a state of constant fear. They don't want to lose their comfort. They don't want to get in trouble. They don't want bad things to happen to them. And so they just do what they must do. They may go to work. They may pay their bills. But they are also operating in a lower level of consciousness because they're operating mostly in the feels. This represents a very controllable level of person. This is typically where the handlers of human society want the majority of people to be. A victimhood is too low of a level of consciousness because those people are just not accomplishing anything. They don't get anything done, so they don't make good slaves. But the ultimate slave is someone who takes responsibility. So you can put things on their back and they will do what they have to do because they're afraid of the repercussions that you can bring upon them. They fear the crack of the whip. And so they live their entire lives just in this state of, I'm doing what I have to do, I'm doing what I have to do, I'm doing what I have to do, I'm scared, I want to be comfortable, right? Very much they're in the feels. So what's the belief system of someone who's in that state of responsibility? Well, they have a sense of right and wrong, right? But they are, again, ultimately in fear of authority. What can happen with people in a state of responsibility is they can be swayed to go against their own sense of what's right because they're told that, hey, this is the responsible thing to do. You have to do your duty. The way of thinking for a responsible person is they're looking to just avoid pain. They don't blame everything on anyone else. They just don't want things to go wrong for them. They don't want to be embarrassed. The general course of action for a person who's in a state of responsibility is do as I'm told. I'll just do whatever I got to do so that nothing bad happens to me. Right? So this is not an ideal state to live in because when you're in that state of responsibility, you're very limited in being able to accomplish your dreams. Most people in a state of responsibility struggle a bit with happiness and are grappling with depression and anxiety because they're constantly living in fear. The depression hits them because for humans to feel powerless is not healthy. We were made for more. We were made to be agents of change and to be able to accomplish our dreams. Our imagination is limitless. And so when we're living in a lower state of consciousness, just in the state of responsibility, we cannot be truly happy. We'll have moments of joy and pleasure, but many people in the state of responsibility find themselves just seeking pleasure because that's the only way that they can feel some relief. So this is where they become especially susceptible to drug usage, alcohol abuse, addiction. Does that make sense? So what's the next level of consciousness above responsibility? Because ultimately we don't want to be there, but we have to admit the majority of mankind is there. And that is where those in authority want us: controllable, fearful, unhappy. The next level of consciousness is enlightenment. Enlightenment. What is enlightenment? According to the dictionary, enlightenment is the state of being enlightened. That is to know, to have knowledge, and to be able to act on that knowledge. People who are in the state of enlightenment are at a level of consciousness where they recognize that they have personal power. By recognizing that they have personal power, instead of living their life in constant fear, they're actually able to live at least a portion of their life according to their dreams. They're able to actually accomplish things. People who are in a state of enlightenment are able to build. They can build business, they can build family, they can build actual accomplishments. They can end up as managers and bosses. They can end up as owners of companies. People who are in a state of enlightenment can end up as leaders in their groups. They can even start nonprofits. People who are in a state of enlightenment often end up in positions of authority because they've transitioned beyond responsibility and they've realized that they are capable as humans to forge their own, as we call it, destiny, but ultimately your future. They can make a transition and grow. They work on their self-development. They read self-help books. People who are in a state of enlightenment realize that they have a measure of control over their lives and often end up trying to control others. Because they're in a state of enlightenment, they recognize that the people who are in a lower level of consciousness, those who are in a state of responsibility, are so fearful of repercussions that those who are in the state of enlightenment, sometimes when their motives aren't good, find ways to dominate and oppress those who are in the state of responsibility. But if you are in a state of enlightenment, and you do have a sense of knowledge, likely it is that you've healed from your complex trauma. All of those who come out of my healing course come out, they exit in a state of enlightenment. They're at a point in their life where they recognize they have personal worth, personal responsibility. Their beliefs are they are capable to do what they put their mind to. Their way of thinking is they look to control their situation. They have an assumption of power, an assumption of capability. In their actions, they do what they want. And they may even be able to command and lead others in that state of enlightenment. The state of enlightenment, though, is not the highest level of consciousness. The highest level of consciousness is self-actualization. What is self-actualization? It sounds really cool, but it's defined in the dictionary as the realization or fulfillment of one's potentialities. The realization or fulfillment of one's potentialities. Self-actualization is a state in which you are actually fulfilling your potential. Your level of awareness becomes so sharp that you actually live 24/7 in the awareness, and you do not pursue pleasure, but instead you pursue purpose. This is less than 1% of the population is in self-actualization. Someone who is aligned with their purpose, they are working in their purpose on a daily basis, on a moment-to-moment basis, but they also have developed certain qualities such as patience, self-control, morality, love, compassion. They are in their personal power. They have wisdom. In self-actualization, they are transcendent, meaning that they are not challenged by the world, because the physical world they recognize is of a lower frequency than the energy realm in which they operate. A self-actualized person actually lives in the energy realm. Even though they have a physical body, they care for their physical body like a car, an automobile. It is as if they have an avatar that they're just caring for, and they do so with the utmost tenderness. And so often they're able to optimize even their physical health because they are so well aligned with the higher realm, which is the energy realm. And they recognize that everything that exists in the physical realm was derived from the energy realm. And with that recognition, with that realization, it informs everything they do. And that is why they are not challenged by situations. They are not challenged by their own emotions. They know how to regulate. In fact, they stay in a state of regulation. They are not challenged by other people's emotions. They know how to help another person to regulate. They can reach out to a person who is in a state of anxiety and help them to reach calm. They're able to bring peace wherever they go. To say that a person who is self-actualized is powerful is an understatement. A person who's self-actualized is power. They've aligned with power. They acknowledge greater intelligence in the universe, but to say they're smart or intelligent is an understatement. They are wisdom. They're a source of wisdom. To say that a self-actualized person is moral is an understatement, because they tend to be moral teachers and guides. They tend to be examples in the way they live their life. Whereas an enlightened person is living according to their dreams to an extent, a self-actualized person is living in love. They're operating just in the frequency of love, which can be tough to understand when you're not in the actualized state. Like, okay, what in the world does that mean? You're just living in love? Like, what does that actually mean? But everything in the universe is bound together by this concept, by this force. And so their ability and their knowledge and wisdom to be able to tap into this force, they become the embodiment of the very fabric of the universe. So they live in love. It motivates and permeates everything they do. So even though they have power, they're able to mitigate the way they use their power and authority with love. Have you ever met a self-actualized person? If you were in their presence, you would feel calmer just being with them. You walk away from a self-actualized person with a higher sense of self-esteem. Like, you feel better about yourself after talking to them. They're inspiring. They're motivating. You're around a self-actualized person for enough time, you start getting motivated, you start transcending levels of consciousness, just being around them, because of the way they're operating so optimally with the universe and their purpose as a human, and they're just like, they are transcendent. So the highest level of consciousness we can get to is that level, self-actualized. That is the goal for everyone who is listening here, who is watching here. You want to be a self-actualized person. You do not need to be a guru that's traveling to the East to be a self-actualized person. You can be a fireman that's a self-actualized man. You can be a stay-at-home mom that is a self-actualized woman. You can be a teacher, a grade school teacher. You can work as an accountant in an office building. To be self-actualized, it doesn't matter your physical location on the earth. It doesn't matter what you're doing as an occupation to earn income. To be a self-actualized person means that you are awake, aware, in touch, operating at the highest level of consciousness, and you are epic. EPIC, ethical, powerful, intelligent, compassionate at all times. Now, all of that being said, it's easy for us to slide up and down the scale of actualization, or rather consciousness, right? So you may be a person who's in responsibility, but you may have your moments of enlightenment, right? You might do little sessions like this where you're tuned in, you're just like, yeah, and you get those moments of enlightenment, and you're like, I'm feeling it, I'm operating, I'm enlightened. And then what happens? Problem happens in life, something scares you, something makes you hurt, something makes you mad, and then you slide back down the scale. And you go from enlightenment back to just being a responsible person. You can be a responsible person, slide right into victimhood. So moment to moment, day by day, year by year, we can find ourselves in different levels of enlightenment. We slide a little bit. We slide. So ask yourself first, okay, where am I on here, generally speaking? Don't tell anyone else, just keep that to yourself. Okay, where do I find myself on this levels of consciousness stuff? And then where do I want to be? The whole concept of being conscious is you have the gift of free will. That is the ability to move, to change, to choose. And this is something that no one can stop you from attaining. You see, even if I take you, put you in jail, put you behind bars, you're not free anymore. You're still free in the energy realm. Your mind is still free. The metaphysical is still free. So you can still transcend these levels from responsibility to enlightenment, to self-actualization, even if you are behind bars. That's how powerful this is. And in fact, this is where many people do find enlightenment when they are imprisoned, because they realize now that the physical is being contained. They need to tap into something higher, something more powerful. So how do we go up? Well, first of all, recognize what brings you down. When we get triggered emotionally and we start reacting in our emotions and reacting according to our emotional self, that's what makes us slide down the scale of consciousness. When we become obsessed with the physical, the pleasures, the tactile, right? Pleasures and pain. That's what brings you down the levels of consciousness. Worrying about pleasures and pain. What makes someone stuck in the victimhood stage is they're just pleasure pain. I feel I don't want to. They don't go to work because they don't want to. Right? And the only way you get them to do something is you gotta zap them and give them pain to make them move. And so those people there, they're just operating in the lowest state, according to fear. They just live in fear, right? And emotion. And then so those who are in responsibility are also living according to fear, although they've got a little personal power. It's controlled. It's like they're being controlled. And those who are living in enlightenment are living according to dreams more so, not so much fear anymore. And those who are self-actualized are living according to love, right? There are people on this earth, even though they are the 1%, that are fulfilled and enjoying their life, that are accomplishing what they set out to do, that are aligned with a higher power and a higher purpose. These people exist, and you can be one of them. So how do we transcend? One of your best tools to transcend is going to be meditation. You need to meditate more. But specifically on what? Is it just that we need to sit and just like clear our mind? Is that what we're trying to do? No. We are trying to awaken the consciousness. To awaken the consciousness, your meditation needs to be analytical thinking. When should we meditate? All the time. I've told the group here, I meditate for hours a day. It would be normal for me to meditate for hours per day. My recommendation is that you are at least getting 30 minutes a day in of meditation. But when do we do that? Do we wake up in the morning and just like sit down and cross our legs? None of that's important. The time of the day is not important. It's not important that you sit a certain way. What's important is that you are constantly going into a meditative state. So you're close to a meditative state at all times, right? So here's the meditative state. You want to be always always in that meditative state. You want to be locked into the meditative state, right? So at any time, you can switch back into meditation. And when you should be doing this is not necessarily just wake up in the morning, do a half hour and be like, okay, I did what I was supposed to do. No. That's not even useful. That's not useful. Use micro meditations. This is where you will pause and think before taking any action. Use micro meditations. This is where you will pause and engage analytical thinking before taking an action. What does that look like? Okay, well, if I'm going to get out of bed, let's say, before I get out of bed, I'm going to take a micro meditation and I'm just going to use analytical thinking, such as this. Okay, I want to get out of bed. My body would like to use the restroom. What is my purpose today? What do I need to accomplish? Well, if I'm operating according to higher purpose, I'm trying to start this nonprofit, so I need to make some phone calls and call certain people and do the such and such. Okay, so after I use the restroom, I'll do so. Oh, well, I do need to balance and care for the body. I think I'll eat first, and then I'll make phone calls. Then I'll take a shower, and then I'll get back into pursuing my purpose here, right? And then you get out of bed. This is how you reach actualization. Analyzing, meditating, thinking before everything you do. Someone asks you a question. Hey, you want to go with us Saturday night? You. Where are you planning on going? Whoa, what was that? Why didn't you just say yes? Do you want to lose your friends? It's because you're not operating according to fear. You are meditative. So when you pause, then you realize there's questions that need to be asked. Intelligent people are asking questions, and then they are meditating on the answers they receive before they give more information, before they give answers. An actualized person is eloquent with their words, concise. In order to do that, they have to think before they speak. Your micro meditations are where you should be finding the majority of your 30 minutes. Needs to be in 1 minute here, 1 minute there, 1 minute here, 1 minute there. We are making thousands of decisions per day. Thousands. You need to be meditating before most of these decisions. You need to be analyzing, and that puts you in the conscious mind. It awakens the cerebral cortex. So now you're operating according to higher thinking, higher purpose. And when you do that, you will transcend and start to reach higher levels of consciousness. Your educational program plays a part. Reading the right books, sure. Watching the right videos, definitely being here in these live meetings. People who are in the live meetings heal faster. That's a fact. So be here at the live meetings, just as you're doing. But when they're done, don't just turn on the television. Stop and meditate. When you're watching my videos on YouTube, when you hear something good, don't just say, that's good. No. Pause the video and meditate. Think about it. Why is that good? How can I apply that? How can I become this? How can I make this information a part of me? How can I become the embodiment of these truths, of this wisdom? Your meditation is like digestion, and you are what you eat. Just like food literally becomes a part of us as our body goes through the process of extracting the nutrients, our meditation allows us to extract the nutrients from what we are learning, and we are learning constantly. So we must stop and we must digest. We must meditate at least 30 minutes a day. And I promise you, you will transcend, you will grow, and eventually you will reach self-actualization.